Well, we come the Sunday before Lent to our final interview as such. We've been having met different people from the congregation. And don't worry if you feel left out, because there's plenty of time. I'm sure we can, if you're in desperate need to be interviewed, do come and see us afterwards. But tonight is Helena's turn. I thought it'd be quite nice to interview Helena. Helena, you've been here now with us, actually just over, as a deacon for six months. And I thought it would be quite good. It's kind of like a mountaintop experience. And it's been a railroad. How's it been for these last 6 months? You can be really honest with us, can't you?
Yes. I think you probably all know a little bit of what I'm going to say. Unexpected, not at all what I was planned for. Everything's been a bit different. But out of that has been some absolute jewels of moments and absolute jewels of people as well. And that's really shown up in these very difficult times, but how wonderful a community this is. And I knew I was coming to a wonderful community. I saw that before I ever got here. But actually, the way that, as we hear so often in the scriptures, gold is tested in the fire, it's really been brought out, and that's been a wonderful, wonderful thing.
So what do you do? It'd be quite nice to hear what you do. Do you just sit in your computer all day, or what do you do? Do you just
a certain amount? Some days do feel a bit like I'm sat in front of the computer all day. Our days are always bounded in prayer, so the day always starts with morning prayer. And at the moment, Graham and I take turns to come into the church for morning and evening prayer. So there's always one of us in the church. And we have a really lovely community on Zoom from all over the world who join us for those offices. So morning begins with coffee and morning prayer. And then there's always a certain amount of prayer. There's always a certain amount of emails, a certain amount of looking at service sheets, of making posters, those kind of things. And also of talking to people. And there's been less chance for that than I really would have liked over this last 6 months. I think I made the mistake when I arrived of thinking, oh, lockdown will be over in a few weeks, and then I'll meet people then. And actually, of course, it's gone on, and I haven't had the chance to meet people. So I'm going to be over the next couple of months trying to call round, trying to visit people, trying to get to know people a bit more, because it's not ideal, but we still have to do what we can, even in those circumstances. So that's a big part as well. And worship, of course, being here on Sundays, being here on Wednesdays and on Tuesdays. So all that I do really flows from that for me. Everything flows from worship.
I'm really pleased you mentioned that. So I think often you don't realise that actually our day does begin, and it doesn't really end. It's kind of like punctuated nicely in the evening, beginning with the offices, and it's just such a. It's really. I certainly for me personally, it's kept me going during these quite difficult times. Thinking of that, what do you think have been the highlights, or what have been the lowlights for you?
Again, I think the lowlights might be quite obvious. Not being able, going back into lockdown, not being able to be in the church for certain periods of time. Actually, a real sadness for me is not being able to see what St. Stephen's does normally. So, coming up now, we're planning Holy Week, we're planning Easter. And what I hear over and over again is, well, normally we do this, but this year we can't. And for me, that's been a real sadness, that's been a real low point, not being able to see what we normally do. But out of that, I think comes some of the highlights, has been how resourceful this congregation is, how resourceful Graham is and creative, and the whole team coming up with new things and different things we can do. So one of the huge highlights for me was the carol service we did out in the school playground, where people could come and could actually sing at that point outside. And it was damp, it was cold, it was drizzling, and it was such a joy. And it was, and I think that's where actually, even though there have been some real low points and some real kind of gut punches of, oh, just wish we could do that, what's come out of it has been green and new and fresh and exciting as well. So I think it's two sides of the same coin.
And that's, hats off to you, Helen, because, I think you've done a really good job of kind of running with some of these things. It's very, very difficult. It must be, I really do feel for you. I don't know how, I think I would have gone absolutely nuts if I was doing my diaconal year in such a time. And I think you've done a really fantastic job and run with some of these ideas as well. You know, coming out of college with a set idea of what one should be doing and what shouldn't be doing. I think you've done a really, really good job. But thinking about that, your diaconal year, has it changed your outlook at all? Or has it changed your theology even?
In some ways it has. When I was going to start being a deacon, for me, like I said, everything that we do flows from worship. And the deacon has a very particular role in worship, particularly at communion. Normally what I would be doing is serving the altar. I would be helping to distribute communion. Some of what I would normally be doing, I can do. So I lead some of the responses, for example. And the reason for that is because it was to highlight that the deacon was a member of the congregation who was there at the altar on behalf of the congregation. So it's that kind of reciprocal thing between the congregation and those who are leading the worship. And of course, you know, as you guys most certainly have seen, I still do Evensong, and I can still do that. But for me, my nature as a deacon, as a servant, as one who serves the community, and Graham will hate this, but just to an extent serve the vicar, you know, at the altar, that's really been challenged because I haven't been able to physically do that in the liturgy. So then it's about finding where that wellspring of service is from and how I can still do that, but just not quite in the way that I was expecting. So how can I still serve and how can I still do that role? And sometimes, you know, that can be, I do it by running the iPad during the service. At the moment, that is a service I can do. That is something that helps to connect me between the congregation and what's going on up here. It can be helping with the chocolate collection during for the food bank and the Easter egg collection at the moment. There are other ways of doing it, but particularly when we weren't allowed in church at all, that kind of liturgical way of thinking about being a deacon was really challenged, and that's something that I've been thinking through quite a lot.
I mean, it shows a great, I mean, I think that's a really interesting, I know there's a piece of research to do there, isn't there, about the role of a deacon in technology. And I think that's an extraordinary thing, because we've been so reliant on it. And you know, we are on one level, we're very, very good Anglo-Catholics. We abided by that rule and did come into church. In some respects, I think that was just such a missed opportunity really by the church, and just didn't, you know, that's why I refused not to, in the second time, refused to keep, you know, not to lock it down, to actually keep it open, because that's never ever going to happen here again. And I promise you that, you know, we will go to absolutely extraordinary lengths to make sure that doesn't happen. But we were under law. It wasn't just ecclesiastical law, it was actually under state law as well. So it was really very, very difficult. And you know, I'm kind of thinking of myself and keeping motivated. What keeps you motivated during these difficult times?
I think if we are being totally honest, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's very hard to kind of keep going and to keep turning up when you're not getting what you would have expected. It is hard. It really is hard. I'm blessed to have a wonderful husband who certainly keeps me going on the coffee front as well as other things. I took up cross stitch during lockdown as something to do with my hands. So now I actually get to see the joy of making something, which is not, I'm not a crafty person, I'm not an artistic person usually. So that's kind of new thing for me and has been a joy to experience. But just turning up to worship, I've always found throughout my life that in some ways, the more reluctant I am to actually bother to get my shoes on, go out the door and turn up to a church service, almost the more I get out of it when I get there. You know, actually just being here in this space with you people always makes a difference. And that's what really does keep me going. And those days when it is snowing and I don't want to be bothered to come into church to lead morning prayer or whatever, I never regret it. I never ever regret making that effort. And so ultimately that is what keeps me going.
It was really interesting. You probably didn't see it, but at the rugby yesterday, the England prop forwards, they had the camera on him, and Victoria said, "I wonder if they get fed up." And he looked and just went, you could just see his whole demeanour. He was just absolutely fed up. And I think Often people don't realise at times we do, however much we are motivated, you see us motivated. That's why actually you, and I'm really pleased you've mentioned the congregation, you are very, very important, because in fact in some respects we're all servants, we're all deacons, we're serving each other, and we feed off you as much as you feed off of us. And of course you have study time, don't you? I mean, I haven't put that, you know, that's not one of the questions. I think sometimes people forget you are still training, and that's an important part of that, and you have a thing called potty training, don't you?
That was one of the things I was going to mention, what I do day to day, which I was intending to and completely forgot about. I am still in training. I still have to turn up and do lessons. So we have POT, which stands for post-ordination training, colloquially known as potty training. It's once a month on Tuesday evenings, and we usually have to, it's often based around a worship thing that we've done. So we just had one on funerals, for example. So I'd write a little mini essay on a funeral that I've taken or I've experienced, reflecting on it theologically, discuss that with Graham, and then take it to this session with all of the other 2 cities and Stepney curates. And sometimes they mix us up between years, so we get an opportunity to interact with each other, because as you know, peer support is really important. And so getting to know the other people who are in the same situation as me is really valuable. But usually we're just in our year groups. So it's me, the other two cities deacons, and the Stepney curates, and together we discuss those things, bringing insights from different parts of the Church of England. You know, we're from very different kinds of church, which can be really, really valuable and sometimes quite challenging. But there's also lots of other training that goes on. So I have safeguarding training on Tuesday. I have a top tips for working with church schools at some point next week. There's always things the church is putting on, and I try and make sure I go to as much of that as I can. And I do have a half study day on Friday afternoons, which is when I try and turn the emails off and get a book out and actually do some proper reading.
It's really good, isn't it? I was, I mean, as people know, I really enjoy reading. I really enjoy studying. I do try and create some space each week where I just turn everything off, phones and everything, do some reading. And it's really, really good that you've taken that on board as well. We read a book as a staff team together during Advent and Lent. And I've done that throughout my ministry. And I'm really, and I hope that you will take that with you into your ministry, that you get a team of people together. So it just feeds you. I think sometimes there's nothing worse, and I'll never get going to see some old canon somewhere. I looked at this shelf, all these books from the 1960s, they didn't have one new book. I mean, maybe they were hiding away somewhere else in another bookcase. But I was quite horrified by the fact that actually there was no new theology, there was no kind of being fed and challenged. And I think it's such an important part of ministry. Do you think has it lived up to your expectations? And what do you think are your surprises?
I think I've talked a little bit about that already in terms of, obviously this isn't what I expected at all. But in terms of my deeper expectations for, at the very basic level, coming here to learn to be an ordained person in the Church of God, in this place, with these people, it certainly has lived up to my expectations. Some of those lessons have been harder than I expected. Some of those lessons maybe I'll have to put up till next year or the year after. But in terms of that kind of basic desire to learn, that basic desire to worship together and to meet God in this place and in you and in each other, I think that really has met my expectations. I think the surprises have been how that's happened. It's almost a truism that you find God in unexpected people and unexpected situations. And that certainly, I still think it's true.
Gerald Hughes wrote a book called God of Surprises, which was about how we are surprised with God and where we meet God in different places. Talking about those expectations, what were you expecting me to ask you? A question that you expected me to ask.
I think the question would be, what do you think you could have done better? Actually, I think is, that's something Graham and I talk about in our own supervisions together. But I'm learning to be a deacon amongst you people, and what do I think I could have done better for you? I think I could have done better at reaching out sometimes, of not expecting that next month will be fine, we'll be open, and I'll be able to meet everybody properly. I think I could have done better in that. And like I say, I'm hoping to address that a bit. But I think that would be the main question.
One of the things that we've talked about, and I did that kind of double loop learning, not just thinking, why did this happen, but, what have I learned from this? And what would I do differently this time? Not necessarily better, but what would I do differently? Because I think better is a difficult. Anyway, we're getting into supervision stuff. Anyway, we're not getting into that. But, we're delighted you're with us, actually. And when the bishop got in contact with me and said, would we take another deacon? There was lots of chats, and there was a great manoeuvre about whether this was going to happen again. And we're delighted that you're with us. You've been I found you a great colleague, a great support, a really big difficult time. And I'm indebted to you. I knew Helena was going to be a great. She'd be very embarrassed about this. She doesn't know how to say this, but I should never forget when we was back around the first day, and there was a right old mess outside of the porch. And when I looked around, Helena was actually already sweeping it all up. I thought, oh my goodness. And was able, though, also to, in the next breath, to sing some quite complex piece. And I just thought, well, actually, this is the essence of ministry on one level, to be able to actually serve on a really, really basic level, but also on a higher level. And we're very, very grateful you're with us. What would you find it, I would ask, what would you hold out in your own dreams for the future and your own ministry?
I would like to shake every single person in the congregation's hand. Is what I would really, really love. Beyond that, I want to see more of St. Stephen's normal, actually. I've been so thoroughly impressed and heartwarmed by how you respond in adversity. And actually, I just quite like to see what happens normally, without kind of the stress and the strain, and how this community can flourish with those weights taken off your shoulders, and our shoulders as well. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see how this community flourishes. But I also just can't wait to find out what else is coming around the corner. I don't know what service I'm going to be asked to plan next. I don't know how Holy Week's going to look. I just want to keep getting snotty.
Helena, thank you very, very much indeed. We will continue, as we have done, to pray for you. We hold you in our thoughts and our prayers as you go forward, as you prepare for your priesting, which is not that long away. And it may be different. We don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, every day is different. We don't know what our future holds. But whatever it does, you can be assured of our thoughts and our prayers.
Thank you, and thank you all.